Welcome, everybody, to the A Little Less Fear podcast. I'm your producer and host of the show, Dr. Lino Martinez. This is your motivational podcast of people's incredible journeys. Oh, yeah, let's do this. Welcome back, everybody, to the A Little Less Fear podcast, the Dr. Lino Show, and I'm welcoming back Tina Erwin. This is her third time here on A Little Less Fear podcast. We just have some incredible topics, a lot to unleash and a lot to uncover, a lot of incredible, beautiful information, and I'm just so grateful to have Tina back on my show. Thank you, Tina.
Lino, I love doing your shows. It's so much fun.
It is fun. I feel the energy as well. So Tina has studied metaphysics all of her life, gaining insight into the mystical world of magic and spirituality. She is the author of 8 books on metaphysics. Her writing comes from an intense desire to know and understand the hard science behind the unseen world of action and reaction, combined with a sincere desire to share this understanding with other knowledge seekers. I myself am definitely a knowledge seeker. And today's topic is on Feng Shui. Tina, welcome.
Thank you so much.
So how did your fascination come? Well, first of all, how do you define Feng Shui? And I want to make sure I'm spelling it correctly. It's F-E-N-G and then the second word S-H-U-I.
Yes. Feng Shui means wind and water.
Wind and water?
Wind and water, because wind and water shape and form everything on earth in some way or other. Gorges and valleys and rivers and streams and the winds and the cyclones and the tornadoes are all part of the forming process or the destroying process. All energy is the same. It simply depends on how this energy is used and how it appears to people in that process. And with understanding Feng Shui, which is becoming one with the balance of nature, you can change an awful lot of things in your life on some very subtle and yet profound levels.
I like how you said this. You said that, so Feng Shui is basically translates to wind and water, and it shapes and it forms everything on earth in one way or another, including even some of the destruction. But even in the destruction, there's a recreation and a rebirth within that destruction.
Okay, let's give an example of that.
Sure.
And I think if I make a statement, then I want to be able to back that up with an example.
Yes.
When you have a hurricane, especially on the East Coast or the Gulf of Mexico, what they've discovered is a lot of the coastal zones are dead. They're just dead zones. There's no life. When a hurricane comes up, it churns up the bottom and it creates life in those zones again. Is a hurricane good or bad? It is. And depending on your point of view, it is good or bad. And that's part of that. It's like fire.
Yes.
Is it good or bad? It heats your home, it burns it down.
Right.
It depends on how it's used. And it's that simple.
It is. It's that simple once you actually step out and look at the beauty of both sides. So with the hurricane, the energy of a hurricane actually in its destruction, it's also creating life because it's kind of like, I guess, whirlwinding everything from below and bringing it up to the surface.
Yes, that's one way of looking at a hurricane. And so sometimes we have things that happen to us in our life, and it feels as if it's a destruction. But out of the ashes of that, you can change your life or look at things differently or change your view. And if you look for the reason, then you can begin to build on that. And I have studied Egyptian, Native American, Chinese, and forms of Japanese Feng Shui. Japanese meaning just mostly how everything is balanced. And I've especially spent a lot of time studying something called biogeometry with Dr. Ibrahim Karim. And biogeometry is nature's design language. but I learned Feng Shui first
Okay.
because we discovered we were living next to neighbors who were super negative. And I mean, they physically attacked our daughter. It was a very bad situation. And we had to decide how best to approach this situation with a child that's, 10 years old, 10, 11 years old. What do you do? A child, a little girl who's really, done something very bad. And we had some choices. So we took something negative. Our daughter was physically attacked, had to go to a doctor. And we turned it into something that was positive because we could have sued the family. And since it took place on school grounds, we could have sued the school. That's one avenue. And I took a lot of soul searching because, oh my gosh, my daughter was attacked. And so you go to battle stations. But if you think carefully, what's the greatest good? And we did consult an attorney, and we had a year.
I'm sorry, Tina. So you asked yourself this question after your daughter was attacked. What is the greatest good?
What is the greatest good?
What an excellent question. Yes. Okay.
What is the greatest good? And it was hard because the question is, why would an 11-year-old or 12-year-old girl attack another child?
Right.
True. My daughter healed. She's fine. But this little girl has a much bigger problem than the scar my daughter has. She has committed assault. I'm sorry, I hit the computer. She committed assault on another person. So we did an enormous amount of soul searching. And when you take your anger and you put it aside and you look at the global situation and the energy in the situation, what's the greatest good?
I like that.
The greatest good was that this child and this family receive help they wouldn't get if we sued. When you sue, you have to pick up a lot of dirt to throw it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So what we chose to do was they were notified we had a year to sue them. But in that year, the child had to apologize publicly to my daughter. The school put in her record that she assaulted another child. And under the terms of this agreement, this child and the family had to receive psychiatric visits for one entire year so that they could find out why this child did this terrible thing. And it was life-changing for the child. They got to find out a lot of other problems and a lot of other issues. It was better for the child. We took something really negative and we made it positive for this child. And we used it as a learning experience for our child. And that was hard. I'm not going to sit here and be holier than thou. I was really angry.
Sure.
So in the process, this family had done some terrible things. They'd vandalized the neighborhood. They'd broken a lot of lights. They'd broken into other people's homes. And we live right next door. I wanted to push that energy away. And this was in 1993. And I stumbled upon an article about this stuff called Feng Shui. And I started reading that all these super famous people were using Feng Shui. Maybe they were bankrupt and they're not bankrupt anymore. And some of the biggest producers in Hollywood had their homes, their offices, everything heavily Feng Shui'd. So I started researching every single thing I could get on it. I found a Feng Shui practitioner in San Diego. He spent 4 hours at our house telling us all the things we had to do to shift the energy in our home and how to push away negative energy.
Wow, this is incredible.
Well, out of something negative
Yeah.
can come something truly positive and life-changing. And it took us many years to execute the 4 pages single space list of things we needed to do to modify our home.
I'm sorry, how long did it take?
Took us several years.
Wow. Okay.
The feng
And there
shui
were
brick.
4 pages of things of the energy that needed to be shifted and moved around in your house. And that took 7 years to.
Yes.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Gotcha.
And one of the things we learned about were feng shui mirrors. And a feng shui mirror has a bagua on it.
Has a what on it?
Bagua, Bagua.
Bagua. Bagua. Okay. What is it, Bagua?
Bagua is an 8-sided shape. It's an octagon.
Okay.
But it has the symbols of the I Ching on it.
Mm-hmm.
And learning about the Bagua, just that little piece of information shifted how we renovated, how we designed rooms. It changed everything. We learned about mirrors. If we wanted to push away the negative energy of our neighbors, we learned that mirrors are the aspirin of feng shui. I mean, you can use a regular mirror, but we used feng shui mirrors, which you can find those online. People on Etsy sell them, eBay, Amazon, lots and lots of people sell.
Tina, I'm blown away right now. I've never heard of a feng shui mirror. You're blowing me away again. Keep going. Yes, feng shui mirrors.
You know what? Would you mind if I grabbed one?
Grab one. Yes.
Hold on.
So we are talking with Tina Erwin right now. She studied metaphysics all her life, and this is the topic of feng shui. This is really incredible. We're about to be looking at a feng shui mirror, which I didn't even know existed. Here we go.
Okay. This is a feng shui mirror.
Okay, I see. Oh, and I see the octagon. And
here's the octagon.
Yes.
And this is basically like a foo dog, but it's sort
and
of
I've
like
seen
a dragon.
this before. Yes.
And what happens is darkness or negative energy looks into the mirror and is repelled. What happens when you look in a mirror? You see yourself. Well, if looking in the mirror is a pleasant opportunity, fine.
Sure.
But if you see your own darkness, you are repelled. And
how does it get repelled if the mirror if you see your own darkness in the mirror?
You leave. It causes energy to leave. It repels the energy. It sends it away.
And how does that work?
I would say it's magic, but it actually follows some esoteric elements of metaphysics.
Okay.
In that mirrors work in every dimension. So if you have mirrors, let's say you have a box, a square box.
I'm gonna have to stop again because you said something important. Mirrors work in every dimension?
Mirrors work in every dimension.
Meaning the third, fourth, and the fifth? Is that what you're talking about when you're talking about dimensions?
Yeah. So if I'm if I put this mirror in a window facing out.
Yes.
So anything negative looking at this is repelled.
Okay.
This is the point of people wearing a third eye image. You know, they wear a third eye piece of jewelry.
I have a third eye jewelry necklace right underneath my shirt. Yeah.
And so why are you wearing it?
I wear it because it was suggested by a friend of mine. Said that they felt that I would benefit from wearing a third eye necklace. And so I got myself one.
Well, the principle of a third eye necklace, bracelet, pin, whatever, is that you see yourself in the eye, and if what you see is great, no problem. But if what you see is negative, you are repelled, you go away.
Okay. Which is why they say, okay, so I'm starting to understand this. When people say if you want, you mirror people, in other words, so you can kind of mirror who you are and who you're attracting. Is this kind of the same concept?
It's part of the same concept. For instance, if you have a box, let's say I have this little box, it's just a cube. And I put a mirror on all sides, top and bottom of this box. This entire box is protected.
Wow.
And you think to yourself, how can something like this work?
Sure. I am thinking that.
Okay. Well, we put 100 feng shui mirrors. We had a big house in San Diego. It was like over a 4,000 square foot house. So we covered that thing with mirrors. And you don't have to see them. You can put them behind pictures. They're all facing out, under beds and in closets, so they face up. 3 months later, that entire family moved.
Wow.
And it's so astounding.
It is astounding.
It's like we couldn't believe it. We thought, oh, this got to be a coincidence. So I told my brother about this. He has an apartment in Los Angeles, worked for Screen Actors Guild. And his neighbor was a chain smoker, and the smoke would invariably come into his windows. He got so frustrated. I said, hey, try this mirror thing. And oh, by the way, right, no smoking. So he took at Target, they have these great big tall mirrors where you can see your whole self.
Yes.
He faced that entire mirror on the wall where this guy lived. So he's looking at the back of the mirror. But on the front of the mirror, he wrote, no smoking in big letters. Within 30 days, the guy moved.
Interesting.
Now,
hey, so
if your neighbor is great, it's not going to be, your neighbor's not going to leave.
Sure. If your neighbor is great, then your neighbor won't be repelled by the mirror.
That's right.
So then it doesn't have to be one of those feng shui mirrors. It could be any mirror.
It could be any mirror. Feng shui mirrors are far more powerful.
Okay.
But his example shows that, any port in a storm can make a difference. What I also wanted to explain is when you're studying feng shui, you're studying how energy works, how it moves, and how it influences you. A lot of people think, oh, you're just moving furniture.
Right.
But it's more than that.
That's what I thought.
And it sounds like, you're just, an oversexed decorator. But it's not that. It's that when you understand psychology, I majored in industrial relations, but I minored in psychology and sociology. So when you study some of the basics of psychology, you begin to see how feng shui meshes
yes,
beautifully.
I see.
As an example, let's look at how energy works.
Okay.
Energy, if you look at a rushing river,
yes,
and it's a straight line, and let's say the snows melt like they're doing in California, that straight line energy pulls everything from the banks of the river, and houses collapse, and riverbanks and roads collapse.
Right. And I've seen that. It's awful. Yes.
It's awful.
It is.
But if the river is an S curve, slowly going around, it nourishes everything on both sides of the riverbanks.
That's interesting. So if the river is basically moving in an S fashion, kind of like a snake, it's going to be distributing its energy in kind of like equal ways and equal parts, almost like harmonizing the area rather than it being a straight, ongoing, flowing river.
Correct. Okay. Harmonizing the area. That is a perfect word. Thank you for that word.
Yeah, that's how I felt it when you were describing it. That's really beautiful. I didn't know that.
Let's say in my former life in the Navy, and we're trying to protect our assets from terrorist attack, we created S curves as you entered military bases. They were sharp S curves, which forced you to slow down to like 1 or 2 miles an hour. So if you want nourishing energy, you need to slow down the energy that's coming to you so it can nourish you, not take from you.
I love this. So nourishing energy is slowing down.
It's slowing down the energy.
Slowing down the energy.
Okay, but what if you have a situation like we do here, and many people do, where we're at our house is here, but here's the hill that runs and the street runs past our house.
Right.
So it's technically pulling all this energy away from us. Our driveway is an S curve to the front door. So was that, I can't change the street. So I took black magic marker and wrote arrows in the street and directed the energy to my house.
Interesting. So you can even recreate energy by drawing somewhere, by drawing it
Yes.
out?
Yes, you can. And I still have those black magic marker marks on the street and on the driveway, leading all the way up to the house, saying, telling the energy, this is where I want you to go. Energy is alive. I mean, when you are,
Love how you said that.
driving down that hill, you can feel your car picking up speed.
Right.
You can feel how rushing that energy is.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have that energy turn, it's amazing. And this happened to my son and his wife, my youngest son and his wife in the Air Force. And they had the same situation. The street in front of their house was really steep. Mm-hmm. And his wife is really on board with Feng Shui. And she and I had a great conversation about it. And I said, go get some markers and send that energy into your driveway. He has gotten one promotion after the other and is on his way to England next month. And he's, at the top of his form in the Air Force. And it's been wonderful for them. And she pays very close attention to certain elements of Feng Shui. And it's about paying attention to what's going on around you. I'm going to tell you a really funny story.
Okay.
When I do a Feng Shui consult and I go to the person's house, I usually ask them, is there anything that's disturbing you? I mean, emotionally, that's bothering you, that you want me to pay attention to or look at? Mm-hmm. And my sister is an amazing Feng Shui consultant. She's really good. So this is my sister's story. She is doing a consult at this woman's house, and she asked the same question, anything you think I should know? And she says, someone's following me. I feel like someone's watching me all the time. And I can never escape this. It's like there's somebody always watching me. Mm-hmm. So my sister said, okay, we'll try and pay attention to see what could that possibly be.
Right.
And my sister gets there, and this woman reiterates how she's so nervous and intense all the time. She feels like someone's watching her. And see, one of the reasons you bring in a good Feng Shui consultant is they come with new eyes. You're so used to seeing what's around you, you can't see it anymore.
Right.
So my sister walks into her home, and they're confronting her. Everywhere she looked, in every room, were 200 African masks with the eyes that follow you. Uh-huh. and my sister said, did you not notice you've got all these masks? Well, they're my husband's. And my sister said, why do you have them? Oh, my mother-in-law gave them to us and we don't dare take them down. I said, and my sister said, but it's your home. Do you like them? Oh my God, I hate them. I just despise these things. All right. So what's happening here in this little tiny example?
Right.
The energy goes right back to the eye, the protection from the evil eye.
And right away, she already doesn't like the masks.
She hates them. They're like warrior masks. They're coming at her, right, whether she's awake or asleep. So those masks carried energy, and that energy is impacting her. It's making her nervous. It's affecting her marriage. It's affecting her sleep. It's affecting her health. This is where Feng Shui really steps out of the, shadows and into pay attention, because this is the outer energy is affecting the inner self. Mm-hmm. So she said, I don't know what to do. When my mother-in-law comes here, she just expects to see those masks. Well, God bless my sister. She was really creative. She said, does your husband have an office? And she said, oh, yeah, he has his study right in here. So my sister says, here's what we're going to do. They took down all 200 masks. and they hung them in his study so his mother could watch him.
Oh,
And her mother-in-law is no longer watching her. She can
right.
sleep at night. They don't have arguments anymore. She doesn't feel like anyone's watching her, and she didn't ever go in his study.
Tina, so these masks, they had energy. And what type of energy was it? Was it from the person that created the mask, or the energy that the viewer is putting onto the mask and projecting onto it back to them? Or is it a little bit of everything? Is it the energy from the person that bought it, from the person that made it, from the person that's putting it up? It's just a bunch of mixed energy?
Well, I had a housekeeper that came to my house, and she said, "You always have all of these things that are looking out." I had some, somebody gave me some flower pots that look like cats, and I have an Italian carabinieri
I
that I
like
bought
that.
in Sicily. He looks out the window and he guards me. So I have many of them, and they're varying heights. They watch the doors. What do masks do? The eyes watch. You're being watched is the psychic metaphor.
Whoa.
If you don't want to be watched, shift what's watching you.
Mm-hmm.
And
So even though it's
that's
a
just
mask,
one example. Yeah, even though it's a mask.
even though it's a mask, and I'm understanding this now. So the mask has eyes created in a mouth, and however it's carved or whatever it looks like, whether it looks like a voodoo doll or whether it looks like a doll, like a beautiful doll with makeup. Either way, it's an energetic, I guess, lenses that are looking through you and to you all the time, 24/7, whether you're
Correct.
asleep and whether you're awake.
I mean, how many people despise clown dolls for that very reason? I would
And then
never
there's a
own
lot
a
of people
clown
that
doll.
love clown dolls.
Great. I did a feng shui consult for this couple that had a lot of problems. That's a very complicated story. But in their bedroom, in the master bedroom,
Yes.
I said, "How are things for you and your husband on an intimate level?" She said, "They're horrible. I just don't know what the problem is." So I love my job. I get to see some of the most fascinating things. So I go into her bedroom, and at the foot of the bed, against the wall, is like a china cabinet, but it's like it's about 6 feet tall. And it's a staggering collection of Hummel china figures. So you have hundreds of little kid-like figures watching you in bed.
Oh, no, no wonder.
And she said, "Well, my mother-in-law gave them to us." And I said, "Well, do they have to be in your bedroom?" She said, "They've always been here." And I said, "Has your sex life always sucked?" And she said, "Yes." I said,
"Well, yeah, with a bunch of little kid statues staring at you, they are going to say."
Right. If you have a master bedroom, don't have pictures of family members watching you.
Yes, right.
Move those things into other rooms. Now you can have happy pictures of family in your children's room, because then it looks like your family's protecting you. But in your master, just have peaceful scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's also talk about the energy of paintings.
Let's do this.
This same family, I walked into their dining room, and I looked around and I said, "I bet you have a lot of fights at dinner." And they said, "Oh, how could you possibly know that? Are you that psychic?" And I would love to say, "Oh, yes, I'm that psychic." But the energy in Feng Shui, for a good practitioner who can see, is sometimes so glaringly obvious. They had a painting that was like 4 feet by 6 feet of this massive battle scene, guns and swords, and everybody's fighting. As they're eating their dinner, that's what they're looking at. And I said, did you guys notice this painting here?" And the husband said, "I'm a military man. I liked it." I said, "But do you like it with supper? I mean, come on now."
Right.
You got little kids and you're bringing your friends over.
Yeah, there's a battle scene happening while you're trying to have your beautiful, blessed dinner meal. Right.
So I asked him, I said, wouldn't this be more appropriate in your office? And he said, and I said, look, experiment. You don't have to believe me. It's okay. Let's just do an experiment and put this painting in your office. And we looked around and we found a beautiful painting of fruit.
Yeah.
How benign is that?
Right.
It's a really beautiful piece. And it had flowers and fruit. And so about 2 weeks later, I talked to the wife and she said, nobody fights at dinner anymore. How can a painting make that big a difference?
Oh my goodness, I believe it.
Because it's working at you on a subtle, unconscious, subconscious level. Advertisers know this. They know exactly how to send energy through the airwaves to you.
True.
So what is the difference in that and Feng Shui bringing balance to a location or a home by having someone with new eyes explain something that you can't see because you've lived with it for so long?
Right. You know, as you're saying this, I'm also feeling that a lot of this, I mean, a lot of these images like battle scenes or even like I have a big Virgin Mary in front of me. Like these are images that people have been seeing generations after generations after generations. So, but what if somebody is being presented with an image that hasn't been seen through generations after generations, and it's something completely new? I mean, and something fresh. I mean, obviously we know nothing's a fresh idea because everything's recycled and we're all connected collectively, but what if it's newer to that person, to that soul? Will it have the same effect that it would if it had been generationally processed over and over?
That's a difficult question to answer because it depends on the image. I'll give you an example.
Okay.
And one of those images is what we call the tortured cross. It's Christ on the cross.
Yes.
And I mean, how many, for 2,000 years, they've had Christ on the cross. And I remember as a child looking at this and the Catholic Church thinking, why don't we take him down?
Yeah.
And I literally couldn't stand to be in a room where that image was there. It affected me so greatly. And when I asked about it, it was like I could get in trouble. But that feeling never left me. You can't make me not want to rescue that man from that torture.
I used to feel
Why would you perpetuate the torture of a master? Someone you love so much. Why would you do that? Yeah. And so I've had a lot of people who have that image in their home shift it. If you want a beautiful cross, a simple symbol of the cross is not negative. But the perpetuation of the torture of a beloved master, as Christ is, may not be as wonderful as you think. And I'm sure there'll be listeners who go, oh, I don't agree with that. That's your choice.
I just had this experience
negatively.
Exactly what you're talking about. I just had this experience. I was at my mom's a couple of days ago visiting her, and she has a statue of the Jesus on the cross and stuff. And I meditate 3-4 times a day, and I found it difficult. I had a very difficult time meditating with that cross in front of me. I felt the suffering of it. I felt I just felt the sadness, and it was hard for me to tune into my own energy staring at that cross, and I had to look away. And then I now you're saying this, it's making sense to me because of the perpetuating suffering that's happening in front of me. It just kind of took away from the positive energy where I was actually trying to dive into.
But it's more than that.
Yeah.
If you're forced to see that over and over, the messages were forcing you to be guilty. Christ died on the cross for your sins. Christ died on the cross to manipulate karma. He didn't die for sins you hadn't committed yet. I mean, that's just ludicrous on the face of it.
True.
I didn't believe it as a little kid, and I still don't believe it, and you won't convince me. And that's the dogmatic line. And part of what Feng Shui does is if you start working with pure energy, if you start working with the pure energy of situations, then you begin to feel the flow. You begin to feel, if that made you uncomfortable, then maybe that wasn't beneficial.
Right.
But because it's Christ on the cross, you dare not say anything.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes the king really is just buck naked. I'm sorry. I mean,
Yeah.
it just is what it is.
Sure.
So
Let's go back to the beginning of this interview where you talked about how you had a feng shui consultant come to your house and it took 7 years to clear everything out. What were some of the things that you learned when you first met with the feng shui consultant about the way that your home was set up?
one of the first things was that we were on a curve and the curve had a downward dip. And he said, you've got to direct that energy to your house. That's when I first learned about the arrows that you send that energy to you.
Mm-hmm.
He opens the front door. The front door of your home is the mouth of chi or the mouth of energy.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you go home and you come in and out of your garage, occasionally you're going in and out of your front door. That's the main doorway where you greet people, where you greet energy.
Uh-huh.
And your front entrance needs to be warm and welcoming, wide and gracious. So you're welcoming this energy in. There are tools to protect yourself at your front door as well. But one of the first things he did, he opened the front door and he saw this big glass door at the back. And he said, oh my gosh, you have straight arrow chi. The energy runs right in the front door and right out the back door. You will have money problems if that's the case. And I thought, yes, this is an expensive house. So yes. And he said, this is what you need to do. He said, it's running so fast. You need a crystal chandelier here and you need all these things. Well, I happen to have a Venetian chandelier in the garage. I just hadn't put up yet. We swapped the chandelier out. We put furniture in. We put chairs in, and we created an S curve to the back door. But I noticed at Christmas, I had a Christmas tree in the living room and a small tree for the kids in the back in front of that glass door. It was a very profitable month in December because I had really stopped that chi from going out that back glass door. I thought that was absolutely fascinating. A couple of the other things he said, we'd been in the house a couple of years and there's so much to do in that house. He said, and this is a big deal in feng shui. If it's broken, get it repaired. If it's old and worn out, replace it. If the plant is dead and dying, remove it. You want fresh, clean, moving, alive energy. So we replaced all the carpets and put tile in. We changed plants. We got rid of dead plants. We cleaned things up, remove clutter, declutter. You don't need all of this stuff. Keep your garage clean. Understand the importance of all of the areas of your home and declutter them and look at how does the energy flow. And when you walk in this room, you should feel glorious in every room of your house. And we did that. I actually brought a friend of mine in who's a decorator. And together we took it up many, many, many notches over the 32 years that we lived there. And now we've since moved to Washington State, and we've done the same thing here. And making sure that how energy flows from your front door throughout your house feels wonderful and warm and fresh. But sometimes it takes other eyes to help you see those things.
Mm-hmm. I almost said rule of thumb. I learned that that's actually not a good term to say because of where it comes from. But as rule here, it's best to always kind of like recreate like the back and flow, the ebb and flow of the S curve, I guess, of the way you want to say that, the snake movement in your home.
Exactly. You want that energy to linger throughout your house. And he talked about all the different cures. We got rid of, bad, awful carpet, and that made a difference. And we identified various problems. We had a hideous wallpaper on all the walls that was offensive to every room we walked in. Well, you can't snap your fingers and everything's done. You really have to take the time and work through each room. But as soon as you set the intention to do that, you begin to change the energy of the entire place. And then by degrees, you're raising it and raising it and raising it. But what also happens is, as you do Feng Shui, you raise the frequency of your home. When you raise the frequency of your home,
Bless you.
When you raise the frequency of your home, you can't believe how much better things are. Mm-hmm. Mechanical things just don't break down. I mean, we had it was like a 25-year-old hot water heater. And the guy said, how has this hot water heater lasted this long? Well, we did a lot of different things with Feng Shui that made it better, but we learned more things and we kept piling on and increasing and improving it over and over and over and over. And as you learn new things, you then apply them and it just expands and enhances so that eventually when you walk into a well Feng Shuied home, it feels so good and you can't explain it. I mean, if you use all of the Chinese cures, and if you have a problem in Feng Shui, there are cures for it. Like if you have negative neighbors, the mirrors are a cure. If you have an area of dead energy, you hang a crystal that has, facets, or you put a crystal in a place that has facets. And once you do that, what happens is you're constantly moving the energy. And as that energy is circulating naturally, then you constantly are feeling refreshed. You don't get sick as often. Your animals don't get sick as often. You can even Feng Shui your car. Your car doesn't break down as often because you've brought enormous energy of pure balance in place. Then you take that to your house is your outer body. And then outside of that is the landscaping for your yard. Well, you want to get rid of old dead bushes and bushes that crowd your front door. If you've got trees that you can't see the front door, don't cut your trees down, but trim them so that you create this beautiful opening for your front door. Mm-hmm. If you've got a straight pathway to your front door and you can't, dig up the cement, you don't want to do that, then, put some things in place. Instead of having like little tiny bushes, remove those. Have a rock here or, a beautiful flower here. So you're sort of walking among this. Again, it slows down the energy and nourishes your yard. And now you have your front door. But let's say that you work from home. You want to send your message out to the world. How do you do that? One of the best ways are wind chimes. I know there's people who don't like wind chimes.
I love them. They're beautiful.
But wind chimes at the front door, and size matters. Get the biggest wind chimes you can afford.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Big, deep tones that echo out. Wow. I actually have 4 sets of wind chimes on this property. And what happens is they call out your message. A welcome mat, that big, broad welcome mat that's clean and new, not threadbare and worn. You want the presentation of a well-run, organized house. And you've picked up the clutter and you keep things working beautifully. Mm-hmm. So that when you walk in, and whether you're not doing this for somebody else, you're doing this for yourself. And you'd be surprised at the difference it makes.
I often get people when they visit me, and this has been happening to me for years, and even the 3 different places that I lived at. And I'm assuming it's my own personal Feng Shui of how I decorate or move things around. But people often feel very relaxed, comfortable. They fall asleep. They're so relaxed. A lot of people like fall asleep. They're like, wow, I feel really good. I feel really calm here. And I used to think, well, geez, my energy must be boring. But then I started realizing I think it's my environment, because people feel very at ease when they come visit me. But I would like to change that up. I'd like to have a little more energy rather than them feeling so relaxed and peaceful. I mean, I really don't know what to do about that. But I'm not that, obviously I love being peaceful and stuff, but I'd like to increase the energy.
Well, that same thing happens at our house. And it used to happen, especially with children. they would come in and they would sit in a chair and these kids would just fall asleep. And the mother would go, my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. And I said, no, because for the first time, they're safe. A lot of times, if you're pushing away negative energy and children are psychic and feel it, they don't feel safe, but they can't tell you that because they haven't consciously formed the thought.
Right.
So when they're in your home and they feel relaxed and they sort of fall asleep, it doesn't mean you're boring. It means that you have a higher frequency location than they're used to. And for the first time, they feel safer than they may have in the past.
Wow, that's incredible, Tina.
Yeah.
Well, that makes me feel awesome.
Well, exactly. And if you go into a home that's cluttered, I mean, think about a hoarder house.
Oh, no.
There's so much trash and junk everywhere.
Yeah.
The energy is completely stagnant. It's like this constipated block of energy.
Yeah.
But when energy moves, when you can see windows and there's not too much furniture, I'm not saying become a minimalist. I'm not a minimalist. Have you seen my office? But when you begin to adjust energy in a way that works for you, then people who visit you just love how it feels. Every guy, usually they're guys, workmen who come to help us with whatever we need done around the house, go, oh my God, I love your house. I just love your house. And it's like, okay. And whether it's an electrician or a plumber or a generator guy or the well guy. And, at first 3 or 4 times was like, yeah. Well, the UPS guy and then the FedEx guy, it was. So we realized that it really is this openness, this peacefulness, this beautiful balance of what's in your home working. Now, you can also do this for your office. And I had a physician who asked me to Feng Shui his office. His practice was just not producing much money, and he was really, really struggling. And he said, can you do something about my office? And I said, sure. First thing I do, walk into his office, and he's sitting there, and the door is behind him. He's over here, but the door is behind him. And I said, do you feel vulnerable? He said, oh my God, I do. And I said, do you command your practice or you feel like you're burdened? He said, I just never know when I'm going to get struck from behind. I'm thinking, or stabbed in the back.
Right.
And this is psychology 101. You never have your desk and your back to the door. You have to be able to see the door so you see what's coming at you. Feng Shui 101.
Yeah.
I completely rearranged his office because the other thing was when he opened the door of his office, out the window was a cement wall.
Oh, geez.
What that message is your practice is going nowhere. This is also true for your home. If you open your front door to a blank wall, you are hitting a wall with everything you do. You're going nowhere.
Yeah.
And so I rearranged his office so his desk was at a different place in the room, and he now had full command of the room. Where the brick wall was, I put a fake Benjamin ficus tree, and I covered it with Chinese fruits of peaches and lemons, and it was a fruit tree bearing financial fruit for him. And that's how we intentioned it.
Nice.
Once we did that, then I found helpful people, and we put beautiful chairs in front of him. He physically looked different. He had the most financially successful month in his practice he had ever had, and it just increased.
That's amazing.
And he said, I cannot believe the difference. We rearranged the furniture, and looking at everything differently, he was stunned. Actually, he moved several offices. I did his office every time. It made a huge difference.
That's amazing, Tina. Wow. Tina, I have another question. What about homes that, I don't want to point fingers, but there are people that prefer to have dark homes, dark rooms, dark bathrooms. Like they've got curtains covering it really dark, and even though it's a bright sunny day outside, I mean, because me personally, when I go into a home that's dark, I start to feel kind of down and drained and depressed. Like I love open windows, and whether I'm in a bathroom or even at nighttime, I open up my windows so that I can get the night moon, or even if the moon's not out, just the stars not out. I just love to get the outdoor energy coming into my window. And sometimes I wonder, how does that affect people when they constantly have their windows closed?
Well, they're depressed.
Hmm.
I mean, that's pretty. You've identified a person who doesn't want to admit that there is a darkness within them, because your home is your outer body. So if your inner body is dark and depressed, and you look at their home and it's dark and depressed, that's their outer body. So the inner self is reflected in the outer self. You have just given a perfect description of that. But I mean, we've got massive windows that face south. So we've got windows everywhere. I wake up to these fabulous pine trees with no curtains, just windows everywhere. And it's as if you can breathe in the energy of nature and you feel happy. Yes. That's another thing. When you have a yard that is beautifully feng shuied, you'll find you have more birds, you have more butterflies, beneficial insects, your plants will do better. Things are in balance. And it brings everything to a point of being very, very, very comfortable. Mm-hmm. And so it's remarkable how it can shift things. Some people have homes that sit on a hill, but in front of them, there's a huge incline to the street. Well, if you have a house like that, what you have is all that energy is going into the street. So you have to do something that sends the energy back. And my daughter and her first husband had a house where the back sloped away. They're losing money like crazy. Wow. And she said, "What can we do?" And I said, "Well," and they had this massive vine, passion flower vine. It was primeval. It was so huge. And I said, "Yeah, it's so giant because all the energy from that house is going right into the vine and you're not keeping it." Whoa. So I took stones and built arrows in a row, like 7 arrows that pointed that energy back up to the house. That's fascinating. Within 3 months, both of them got enormous promotions, like $10,000 or $20,000 a year promotions, and then they got other jobs. It was astounding the difference it made, and they sold that house for quite a profit. So, but the vine died. The vine wasn't getting the energy. The vine died. It was kind of astounding. When you look, it was astounding because here's an example of, I'm going to shove that energy back. And I did it as unobtrusively as I could. I also took feng shui mirrors on the fence at the back of the property. So when the energy hit the mirror, it went back to the house. So that energy stayed with the house. I did multiple things, shifted the energy back to her house. It was remarkable. That is remarkable. My goodness. How can your average person, if they can't, let's say, don't have the means to hire a feng shui consultant, how can somebody get this information online and figure this out for themselves? Or is it kind of difficult to do? I would certainly recommend, there's some wonderful, this is Home Design with Feng Shui. Okay. And this is written by Tara Catherine Collins. Terah Catherine Collins. And this is a very easy book to I'm sorry, come again. Her name was Tara Collins? Tara Catherine Collins. Catherine Collins, okay. There are some wonderful feng shui books out there. And Sarah Rosbach has written books. Denise Lin has written books on feng shui. And there's some wonderful authors that really help you understand how is the energy moving in a room. For instance, I saw a couple who had chronic back problems whenever they were in bed. Well, they had this massive beam directly over their bed. So if you looked up, that beam was right on their back at night. Whoa. Well, there's a Feng Shui cure. So you put, let's say this is the beam. You put two, they're called flutes, but you create a bagua. So you create an energy circle. And like that, their back pain stopped. Because the beam wasn't cutting them in half anymore. I had a guy who was a recruiting coach in New Orleans for all these big teams. And he had this fabulous office in downtown New Orleans. And he was like at the top floor. And I mean, the office was like 2,000 square feet. It was so big. And I said, so when you come in your office, I mean, your desk is well positioned. What bothers you? He said, my back never stops hurting. My back hurts so much, so constantly, no one can fix it. So I walked over to his desk. I walked over to the window behind his desk. I pulled the curtain back, and there's this building coming at him like an arrow. I mean, it was a wedge that was designed to come right at his back. So I put a big Feng Shui mirror in the window, returned the energy of that building, and his back pain stopped.
My goodness.
And he said, "You're joking. That can't possibly work." And I said, well, then what's the harm in trying?
Sure.
If it doesn't work, call me crazy. But if it does work, it's amazing.
It is amazing. I
had a real estate agent. The people who were helping her with all of her closings were chronically sick. She said, you have got to figure out what's the problem. So I looked at where they were sitting, and I took a whole bunch of Feng Shui mirrors and their desk drawers facing down, facing up, facing all sides, but mostly facing down, because I didn't know what was below them. But whatever was below them was making them sick, but it wasn't making my friend, the agent, sick. So I said, let's give it a little time. And then if I still haven't found it, call me back. Sure as the devil, they weren't sick anymore. But the business below them went out of business. What? Because what happened was, it was a massage business. Mm-hmm. And the energy and the negativity and the pain that people were feeling was coming right up through the floor and making the people above them sick.
Man, this is incredible.
So, I mean, I just have had years and years and years of these experiences. I've just done lots and lots and lots of consults. And when you start looking at it from those viewpoints, then you can see sometimes there's such simple solutions.
Yeah.
And there was a Feng Shui master, Professor Lin Yun, who was called to this home, and this elderly man was sick and his back chronically hurt. And so, he looked around and he went outside and he looked at nature, and he zeroed in on the energy of this one mountain, and he could feel where it bounced. So he put a stake in the ground, and that stake broke up the energy, and the man didn't have back pain anymore. It's really amazing how some of this can work.
It is really amazing. There's going to be so much for me to think about at the end of our discussion here, looking around and all my friends and family, and my mom telling me when she can't sleep at night and stuff, just like looking around her room, like, wow, there's just so much to look into. I had another question going back to the mirrors, back to the beginning of this conversation when we were talking about mirrors. What about black mirrors? It seems to be kind of like the hip thing these days. I'm seeing.
I don't know what you mean by a black mirror.
So I guess you can buy a black mirror, and supposedly you can see things out of this black mirror and either show you truths or show you if there's someone else on the other side. I guess kind of more of a spiritual, supernatural type thing. Have you seen anything, or is this all just false stuff?
You remember the movie Snow White?
Yeah.
Mirror, mirror on the wall. Yeah. That's a black mirror. The problem with a black mirror, as you have described it, it is a portal to the other side. And it's like opening your door to Alcatraz. You have no control over who comes in. And a black mirror is the doorway to disaster. If you have one, break it in a million pieces and throw it away. Get rid of it.
But why specifically a black mirror? Is it the color? Is it the...
It's not light.
I see.
It's not bringing light to the room. It's not bringing, it's not reflecting anything positive. And the intention of it is a doorway. And since you have no control what's on the other side of the door, for God's sake, get rid of it. There's another thing that people need to be very, very careful of. And this isn't necessarily Feng Shui. This is just Metaphysics 101. If you have tarot cards, angel cards, runes, I don't care what you call them. If you have cards, you better not have them in you need to get rid of them, period. But most people, especially women, have them in their nightstand or under their bed. I have one woman had 50 decks under her bed. 50. Wow. Some women keep them in their underwear drawer. I have no idea why, but they do. And they end up having a lot of emotional and physical problems. And some people will disagree with me. You're free to disagree. But in your right mind, if you're a really, really good metaphysician, you do not need cards. You need your own personal private connection to the divine. And the more connected to the divine you are, the more you'll positively feel energy and that which is out of balance. It's the same feeling if you walk into a room with paintings and every one of them is cockeyed. What's the first thing you want to do? You want to go and write that painting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what Feng Shui is. It's bringing balance to a location.
I love that. Bringing balance to a location.
It brings a balance to a location, whether it's a car or, for instance,
energetic balance.
Yeah, I have Feng Shui mirrors in the doors of my car and the trunk facing back and sides so that you're not hit from the back and sides.
That's amazing.
I used to have a BMW 528, and my son was a BMW mechanic and a Rolls Royce mechanic at the time. And whenever I'd send it in, he'd say, "You're going to have to remove all this Feng Shui stuff because I can't explain this to these guys." But no one could understand why this car needed so little repair. At the age of 20 years, it was in practically mint condition. And Feng Shui that protects your car, because you're caring for your car, makes a difference. When you care for your home or your body, makes a difference.
So true.
All of those things make a difference.
Caring creates the harmonization.
Exactly. That is exactly what it does. When you care how the energy is moving and you take a moment to feel it, it's not woo-woo or craziness. It's being in touch, emotionally being in touch with what's going on around you.
Yes.
When you are emotionally in touch, then you can feel this area is really cluttered, or this area, something is off here. When I'm remote viewing a location and I'm going room to room, I can feel something is off in this room psychically. And so I need Feng Shui to help me keep the frequency high so I can do the things that I do. For people who want to become more in touch with their psychic selves, I would highly recommend, don't just get a few things off the internet and watch a YouTube. Get some books, read it, study it, begin to feel it, and pay attention to a lot of the little things that go with it.
I love this incredible topic, everyone. Tina Erwin on A Little Less Fear podcast, the Dr. Lino Show, and the topic of Feng Shui. Tina, if somebody would like to hire you as a consultant for their home and their Feng Shui energy or anything else around them, their businesses or even their vehicle, how can they get a hold of you?
Contact at ghosthelpers.com.
Contact@ghosthelpers.com. This is Tina Erwin, everybody. Tina, amazing as always. I'm just blown away by this topic, and I'm like eager to look around and start moving things.
Lino, we are such a good team.
We really are. We're an incredible team, and like just an amazing time with you. Yes, high five, double high five.
High five.
Thank you so much, Tina, and I look forward to connecting with you again.
Sounds great.
Have an incredible rest of your day.
You too.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for tuning in to the Dr. Lino Show, A Little Less Fear podcast. If you'd like to get a hold of me, you can do so by sending me an email at a little less fear at gmail.com or through an inquiry from my website at www.alittlelessfear.com, where you will always find information on where to get my book. You can get my book on Amazon and Amazon paperback version, Kindle or Kindle Unlimited. And I also create incredible visual video poetry for people that are interested in marketing or even just to send a personal note to anybody or somebody that you might love. So yeah, check it out. I love it. Poetry is my passion, one of my other passions, aside from doing what I do right now, which is giving you all the motivation that you need to keep growing, to keep motivating people, motivating yourself, and to keep expanding. I love you all so much. Have a blessed day and take care. Rock on.